The Resurrection Machine, an architect's Giza confession, a dialogue with eternity. They call me a ghost now, a name on a forgotten papyrus. But my work, it stands. It has outlasted pharaohs and prophets, empires and insects. You look upon my creation and you see a tomb, a mountain of stone. You see a mystery, a puzzle of ramps and levers. You are asking the wrong questions. You see, I did not build a grave. I built a gateway. I did not stack stones. I composed a symphony of granite and limestone, tuned to the frequency of the stars. You believe my king is dead, buried in the dark heart of my mountain. But I tell you, he has never been more alive. You are looking at the most ambitious machine ever conceived. A vessel for eternity. A silent God waiting to tell its story. My story. The divine blueprint. I remember the day the God gave me the command. Not Ra, the sun god, but the living God, my pharaoh, Khufu. We stood on this empty plateau, this barren stretch of limestone under a punishing sun. There was nothing but sand and wind. He was a young man then, his eyes filled with the fire of a divine mandate. He did not ask for a palace or a tomb. He asked for a staircase, a ladder made of stone that would allow his mortal form to shed its skin and ascend to the imperishable stars, to sail the cosmic Nile with his father, Ra. My task was not merely architectural, it was theological. I was not an engineer. I was a priest of physics and faith. I returned to my workshop, my mind a storm of calculations. The shape was preordained, a divine truth. The Ben stone, the first piece of land to emerge from the primordial waters of chaos, was a pyramidion. The rays of the sun breaking through the clouds form a pyramid of light. The shape was life. It was creation. My mountain would be a Ben stone of impossible scale, a permanent sunbeam carved from the earth. But its location, its very soul, had to be perfect. For 3 seasons, my astronomers and I slept by day and read the celestial papyrus by night. We charted the paths of the stars, the wanderers, the sun's journey. We hammered stakes into the earth, stretching ropes drenched in water to find a perfect level base. We watched the rising and setting of the stars to find the cardinal points, not with a compass, but with the grand compass of the sky itself. When we were finished, the foundation for my machine was aligned to true north with a precision that would shame a god. The blueprint was not merely on my scrolls, it was written in the heavens. We were not building on the Giza plateau, we were anchoring a piece of the sky to the earth, the army of stone and sand. A blueprint of the heavens is one thing. To build it requires a nation's soul. Forget your stories of whips and slaves. A work of this magnitude cannot be built on fear, it must be built on faith. An army of 100,000 men was summoned, not in chains, but as a sacred duty. From the farthest reaches of the Nile they came. Farmers during the inundation, when the fields were flooded and their hands were idle. Masons, carpenters, engineers, and scribes. We built them a city at the foot of my mountain. Bakeries that produced thousands of loaves a day, breweries, dormitories, hospitals. These were not slaves. They were the proudest artisans of the kingdom, the lifeblood of Egypt. To work on the pharaoh's ascension machine was the greatest honor of a man's life. It was a promise that their own souls would be looked upon favorably in the afterlife. Their energy was boundless. I was their general. My battlefield was one of logistics. I organized them into philes, divisions of 2,000 men, each with its own name, its own identity. The friends of Khufu, the drunkards of Menkaure. They competed with each other, their pride fueling their labor. My scribes were my colonels, tracking every block, every measure of grain, every jug of beer. From the quarries at Tura, across the Nile, came the fine white limestone for the casing, gleaming like polished snow. From Aswan, 500 miles to the south, came the granite, the bones of the earth, for the heart of the machine. An unending flotilla of ships, a conveyor belt of stone and sustenance, all flowing to this one sacred point on the earth, needles of the sun god, the obelisks. While the mountain grew, another, more delicate work was underway far to the south. The pyramid was the body, the anchor. But the temples at its feet, the places of ritual and worship, needed to speak directly to the sun god Ra. They needed antennae. You call them obelisks. I called them tekenu, to pierce. In the sun-scorched quarries of Aswan, my master masons performed a kind of earth magic. They did not quarry the obelisks, they freed them. A single, flawless piece of red granite, 300 tons of solidified sunlight, had to be located. There could be no cracks, no imperfections. For months, they would pound the stone, not with chisels, but with balls of dolerite, a rock harder than granite. Pounding, a percussive prayer, chipping away dust to create a trench around the giant's body. The final act was one of fire and water. The trench was filled with wood and set ablaze. When the granite was impossibly hot, they would flood it with cold water. The thermal shock, if the gods were smiling, would crack the monolith from its bedrock in a single clean break. It was a heart-stopping moment. A single miscalculation and a year of work would be for nothing. Once freed, it was dragged by thousands of men to a specially constructed barge to float down the Nile like a captured god. To raise one was an even greater challenge, a secret of levers, ropes, and a mountain of sand. When it was finally erected, its pyramidion cap sheathed in electrum, it was a needle of light, performing acupuncture on the earth, drawing the power of the sun down into the sacred ground of the temple. The Chamber of Ascension. For 20 years, the mountain grew, and as the final casing stones were put in place, the true work, the secret work, was completed in its dark heart, the king's chamber. This was not a room for the dead. It was a chamber for rebirth. We built it not of limestone, but of the red granite of Aswan, a stone that hummed with the energy of the earth's creation. The sarcophagus, you call it. A coffin. It was a vessel, a chrysalis, carved from a single block of granite so large it had to be placed inside the chamber before the roof was sealed. And from this chamber, we aimed our cannons at the stars. You have found the shafts, so small a man cannot crawl through them. You call them ventilation. A king who is a god does not need air. No, they were channels, star shafts, soul corridors, precisely angled through hundreds of feet of solid stone to point to very specific heavens. The southern shaft was aimed at Orion's belt. To the Egyptians, this was Osiris, the god of resurrection. When the king's soul, his Ba, left his body, this channel would be its guide, a direct path to merge with the great god of rebirth. The northern shaft was aimed at the circumpolar stars, the ones that never set, the imperishable stars. This was the king's destination, his eternal home, a place of unchanging permanence. The chamber was an engine, and the stars were its destination. The sarcophagus was the launch pad, the shafts were the trajectory. All we needed was the passenger. When Khufu's body was finally laid in the granite vessel, the machine was complete. The great stone plugs were sealed, and the silence began. The echo in the stone. I lived to see it completed. The sound of 100,000 men fell silent. The city at its feet was abandoned. All that was left was the wind and my perfect silent mountain. Did my machine work? You look for a body and find only an empty vessel. You call it a robbery. I call it a success. The pharaoh is not there because his journey is complete. My creation worked. It performed its single glorious function. It launched the soul of a man into the heart of a god. Now it is dormant, a silent testament. You walk its halls with your electric lights and your measuring tapes. You analyze its stone, but you cannot read its language. You see the hardware, but the spiritual software is lost to you. You see a relic, an echo of a forgotten science. And so you will continue to ask your questions, and the mountain I built will continue to hold its silence. It has already given its answer.